I'm Rachel Hayes, 32 years old, and I spent my entire life trying to please my mother. Every choice I made, what I wore, who I dated, even where I went to college, was shaped by her approval. But no matter what I gave up, it was never enough. And then, on her 65th birthday, in front of her friends and family, she raised a glass, looked me in the eye, and said words I'll never forget. "The best gift you could give me, Rachel, is to leave my life for good." That moment shattered me. So I did exactly what she asked. I left. I packed up, sold my house, froze our accounts, and disappeared without a trace. And if you're wondering what happened when a daughter obeys her mother's cruelest wish, when my own mother told me to leave her life, and I actually did, this is my story. But before I continue, I'd love it if you could drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear more stories of people who found the courage to walk away from relationships that were destroying them. Because sometimes the bravest thing we can do isn't to stay, it's to disappear. I grew up in a little town in Vermont called Willow Creek. From the outside, it looked like the picture of perfection: a neat colonial house, white shutters, flowers lined up along the walkway. People in town admired us. They saw my mother, Margaret Hayes, as the elegant lady who ran the church committee, the library board, the endless charity events. But inside those walls, life was very different. At 6 years old, I can still remember standing in front of the mirror while she hissed, "Rachel, straighten your shoulders." A Hayes girl never slouches. 10, I put on a blue dress for Easter Sunday, twirling to show her. She frowned, arms crossed. "That makes you look pudgy. Change it before someone sees you like that." And by 12, I was already hearing the line that would define my childhood. "Why can't you be more like Emily?" Emily, my older sister. The golden child. The straight-A student. The one who played piano at church while the whole town clapped. Every achievement of hers was magnified. Every effort of mine diminished. The only person who ever seemed to notice me was my father, Daniel. A gentleman, the town doctor with tired eyes and a soft smile. He was the one who clapped the loudest at my school play. He was the one who taped my drawings to his office wall when Mom said they cluttered up the house. I'll never forget the night he slipped into my room after Mom compared me to Emily for the 100th time. I was crying, staring at the ceiling. He sat on the edge of my bed and whispered, "Sweetheart, your mother's wrong. You don't have to be Emily. You're enough just as you are." But when he died suddenly of a heart attack when I was 16, that shield was gone. From that day forward, I had no buffer. Every bite of food, every grade, every boyfriend came with a lecture. "You're getting fat, Rachel. No man will want you. You'll never get into a good college with marks like this. You're too quiet. Speak properly or you'll embarrass me." The walls of our house didn't just keep the world out. They kept me trapped in her shadow. And every time she cut me down, I swallowed the same thought. Maybe if I just try harder, someday she'll love me the way she loves Emily. But as I'd discover years later, when my mother told me to leave her life, it wasn't the first time she had been pushing me away. She'd been doing it my entire childhood, one cutting remark at a time. After college, I should have been starting fresh, chasing dreams, building a career in a big city. Instead, I stayed in Willow Creek. Mom had started talking about dizzy spells right as I was choosing schools. Doctors found nothing wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to leave her alone after Dad's death. So I gave up a scholarship in California and settled for a local university 30 minutes from home. That decision shaped everything. I landed a job at a small marketing agency, decent pay but hardly what I had once imagined. I bought a modest little house just 3 blocks from hers. Close enough for her to call any time. Far enough that I could pretend I had independence. But the truth? I never did. Every relationship I tried to build crumbled under her shadow. The moment I brought a boyfriend home, she'd find the flaws. "He's too quiet. He'll never provide. He isn't Hayes material." And even when someone truly cared for me, they couldn't compete with the constant interruptions, the phone calls, the errands, the guilt. Rachel, can you drive me to the pharmacy? Rachel, the gutters need cleaning. Rachel, my checkbook doesn't balance. Never ended. And no matter what I did, there was always a comment ready to cut me down. By the time I was 30, I had been promoted to creative director at the agency, a milestone I worked years to reach. But when I told her, hoping for even a flicker of pride, she barely glanced up from her dinner plate. Creative director? At a small-town firm? That's hardly a real executive job. The words burned. And yet, like always, I smiled and swallowed it. Meanwhile, Emily swept into town twice a year, holidays, the occasional birthday, always staying at a hotel, never our homes. And every visit, she was showered with admiration. Emily just closed a $1 million deal. Emily's taking the kids to Europe. Our mother's eyes would light up as if Emily were the sun itself. I became the shadow again. Invisible. Useful only when needed. Till I kept trying. Every holiday, every birthday, I searched for the perfect gift. A cashmere sweater? Returned because the color washed me out. Concert tickets? Then used because who has time for music at my age? A spa weekend? Declined because I'd rather see Emily. It didn't matter. Nothing I gave would ever be enough. And yet, I kept telling myself that if I tried harder, just one more year, just one more sacrifice, she would finally see me. Finally love me. But I was wrong. Because years later, when she raised her glass at that birthday dinner, she proved once and for all that my role was never to be loved. My role was to disappear. When Margaret's 65th birthday approached, I told myself, this year will be different. This year, I'll finally be enough. I planned everything down to the last detail. A private dining room at Willow Creek's most exclusive restaurant, Bellini's. Her favorite lemon sponge cake, custom ordered. A sapphire brooch from the 1920s, nearly $2,000, money I had been saving for a design course in New York, because I remembered how her eyes had lingered on one just like it months earlier. And for once, I even managed to convince Emily to come. It would mean so much to Mom, I said over the phone. What I didn't add was, it would mean so much to me. To not be the only one carrying the weight of this family. To not be invisible. On the night of the dinner, I got ready like it was my wedding day. A navy blue dress conservative enough for her standards. My father's pearl earrings. Hair pinned carefully, smile practiced in the mirror. I whispered to my reflection, please let her see me tonight. But when I arrived to pick her up, she opened the door in her bathrobe. Mom, we need to leave in 15 minutes, I said, nerves already fraying. She scanned my outfit with that familiar disapproval. You know I take time with my appearance. Unlike some people. By the time she was ready, it was nearly an hour past our reservation. The restaurant, Emily and her husband were already waiting with her friends. Margaret laughed as she swept in. Rachel was running late, as usual. You know how she is with time. The sting hit like a slap, but I forced a smile. Tonight wasn't about me. Tonight was about making her happy. Dinner blurred past in waves of chatter I couldn't penetrate. Emily talked about her latest business trip, her children's private school, her husband's promotion. Mom's eyes glowed with pride at every word. When I tried to join in, she cut me off mid-sentence. Rachel, could you ask the waiter for more water? My glass is empty. I shrank back into silence. Then came the cake, candles flickering, the room dimmed. A family friend raised his glass. Margaret, 65 years. Share some wisdom with us. She smiled, lifted her wine, and began. I've been blessed. With my wonderful daughter Emily, who makes me proud every day. With my successful son-in-law and beautiful grandchildren. Her hand tightened on Emily's. Then her eyes slid to me, her smile sharpening. And Rachel, of course, always present. Laughter rippled weakly around the table. My cheeks burned. And then she said it. The words that would end everything. If I could have one wish, one perfect birthday gift, it would be this. Rachel, I wish you would finally leave my life so I could have peace in my remaining years. The room went silent. Forks froze. Glasses trembled midair. I sat there, the brooch clutched so tightly in my hand I thought it might break. And all I could think was, she meant it. She really wants me gone. She told me to leave her life. So I stood, my voice barely steady. Excuse me. And I walked out. No one followed. Not even Emily. That night, driving home in the dark, silent tears streaming down my face, I realized something I had buried for decades. She didn't just humiliate me. She freed me. And if my mother's birthday wish was for me to leave her life, then maybe for once I would give her exactly what she asked for. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table with a yellow legal pad, the clock ticking past midnight, and for the first time in years my thoughts felt sharp. Clear. Cold. If her birthday wish was for me to leave her life, then maybe the greatest gift I could give was to grant it. Not halfway. Not just moving across town. But completely. By morning I had a plan. First step was financial. I met with Barbara Lewis, a local attorney I'd known from a networking event. Sitting in her office, I told her the truth. About the humiliation at Bellini's, about decades of criticism, about my decision to disappear. Barbara leaned forward, her voice careful. Rachel, this is drastic. Are you sure? I stared at my hands and said, I've had 32 years to be sure. I'm done. She referred me to another attorney, James Hoffman, who gave me the practical advice I needed. Protect the accounts, place them into a trust, and cut direct ties. Not empty them, not steal, but structure them so they could only be used for her care. For once, her financial power over me would be broken. The second step was my house. I called a real estate investor who bought homes quickly for cash. I knew I could get more if I waited, but waiting meant being found. Safety was worth the price. The third step was my job. 13 years at the agency ended with a single phone call to my boss. My voice didn't even crack as I said the words. I'm resigning. Family reasons. The hardest step was deciding what to take with me. I looked around my little house, the furniture, the neatly organized shelves, the artwork I'd hung to make the place feel alive. And I realized almost none of it mattered. I made 4 piles: sell, donate, store, and take. The take pile was shockingly small. A quilt my grandmother had sewn, my laptop, a few books, my camera, and a handful of photos. Everything else I left behind. On my final night in Willow Creek, I lay on a camping mat in the middle of an empty bedroom. The silence felt crushing and liberating all at once. The house echoed with the ghosts of every call from my mother, every demand, every tear I had shed. The next morning, I signed the closing papers, mailed the brooch back to her with a short note. You asked for a different gift, so I'm giving you this one instead. Goodbye. Then, with nothing left tying me there, I started my car, pointed it west, and drove. In my rearview mirror, Willow Creek shrank smaller and smaller until it was gone. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing her approval. I was chasing freedom. The first few days on the road were a blur of highways, cheap motels, and gas station coffee. I paid for everything in cash, my old phone buried in the glove box like a relic of a life I no longer wanted. By the 6th day, I reached the Pacific Northwest. Endless green forests, mist curling over rocky cliffs, the sea stretching wide and merciless. For the first time in years, my chest loosened. I could breathe. In a small coastal town called Harbor Cove, I stopped for coffee. The shop smelled of roasted beans and salt air, a mix so comforting it nearly brought me to tears. The woman behind the counter, Diane, had silver-streaked hair pulled into a messy bun and eyes that had clearly seen storms of their own. "You're new," she said simply, sliding my drink across the counter. Not a question, just a statement. I laughed softly. That obvious? Harbor Cove's small. A new face always stands out. But don't worry, around here we respect privacy. A lot of folks come here to start over. Her words sank into me like a promise. That same afternoon, I walked into the town's real estate office and saw a listing, a furnished cottage overlooking the bay, month-to-month lease, available immediately. Felt like a sign. When I signed the papers, I didn't write Rachel Hayes. Instead, I used a new name, Elaine Davis. My middle name paired with the street I grew up on. Ordinary, unremarkable, and exactly what I needed. Cottage was small, weathered by the sea air. Porch leaned slightly, the windows stuck when the humidity rose, but from every room I could see the water. Waves that kept rolling whether I was broken or not. And in that little house, I began building a rhythm that felt like life. Coffee each morning at Diane's shop. Long walks along the harbor where no one knew my name. Evenings sketching designs on my laptop, picking up small freelance jobs under my new identity. For the first time, I wasn't Rachel Hayes, the disappointing daughter. I was Elaine Davis, a woman who belonged only to herself. And every time I woke to the sound of the ocean outside my window, I remembered my mother's words at her birthday dinner. "I wish you would leave my life." Well, she got her wish. And here, in Harbor Cove, I was finally learning what life felt like without her shadow. For a little while, I let myself believe I had vanished cleanly. My days in Harbor Cove passed quietly. Coffee with Diane, long walks by the bay, evenings spent sketching new designs. I thought I was untouchable. But Margaret Hayes always found a way to pull me back. One morning, sipping coffee on the cottage porch, I opened my laptop. And there it was, an article in the Willow Creek Gazette. Local mother abandoned by daughter after decades of care. The headline made my stomach twist. The photo was worse. My mother in a hospital bed, eyes watery, flowers piled around her. The story painted me as a selfish daughter who had emptied our accounts and disappeared, leaving her frail and penniless. The phrase financial abuse burned like fire on the page. I felt the air leave my lungs. I hadn't stolen a dime. I had protected the money, locked it into a trust for her care. But no one in Willow Creek knew that. They only knew the story she wanted them to believe. Scrolling further, I found a fundraising page. Help Margaret Hayes recover from her daughter's betrayal. $3,000 raised in just a few days. Comments filled with outrage. How could a daughter do this? After all Margaret sacrificed. Some people don't deserve family. It was the same story I had lived my whole life, her as the saint, me as the disappointment. But now the lie wasn't whispered in our kitchen. It was printed in ink for the world to see. Then came the voicemail from Emily. "Rachel, please call me back. Mom had some kind of heart episode. The doctors say it's not serious, but she's upset. She can't access the accounts. The bills are piling up. She needs you." My heart clenched. The reflex to run back, to fix it all, was almost impossible to fight. For 32 years, I had been programmed to save her no matter what it cost me. But then, another message. A private one from Dr. Peterson, her doctor. "Rachel, I can't share full details, but know this. Your mother's condition is stable. It was a panic attack, not a heart attack. She is physically fine. Please take care of yourself." I stared at the screen until my hands shook. The hospital stay was real. But the crisis? The victim story? The fundraiser? All manufactured. Even miles away, she was still controlling the narrative. She had told me to leave her life, but now she was dragging my name through every headline to pull me back in. That night, sitting on the porch with the waves crashing below, I whispered into the dark. She wants me gone. She said it herself. So why am I still letting her haunt me? And for the first time since leaving, I realized the truth. She could only pull me back if I let her. 4 days, I paced the cottage with my phone in my hand. Emily's messages replayed in my head. Mom needs you. The bills are piling up. Please come home. That word, home. Did Willow Creek even count as home anymore? The guilt pulled hard. 32 years of training doesn't break overnight. Every fiber of me wanted to jump on a plane, walk into that hospital room, and soothe her like I always had. But then I walked into Diane's coffee shop. She took one look at me and said, "You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a smile. Family drama. Complicated. Diane set down the mug she was holding, wiped her hands on a towel, and said quietly, "You know, when I left my ex, he told everyone I was unstable. He spread lies until I almost believed them myself. The hardest part wasn't leaving him, it was staying gone when he pretended to fall apart without me." Her words stopped me cold. "What made you stay gone?" I asked. She shrugged. I asked myself one question: if I go back, what changes? Would he suddenly be kind? Would the lies stop? Or would it all be the same, only worse because now he knew I couldn't stay away? Her eyes met mine. Steady. Certain. And in that moment I saw it. If I returned now, nothing would change. My mother would keep humiliating me, keep controlling the story, keep making me small. The only difference would be that she'd know I could be reeled back anytime she played the victim. That night, I called James Hoffman, the attorney. My voice was steady as I said, "Issue a statement. Release the trust records. Let people see the truth, that every penny is there, that I didn't steal anything. And tell my sister this: I am safe. I am well. And I am not coming back." When I hung up, I stepped onto the porch. The stars stretched wide above the black ocean, and the sound of the waves filled the silence. She had told me her birthday wish was for me to leave her life. And for the first time, I wasn't resisting. I was granting her wish. On my terms. 2 days after James released the trust documents, the first cracks in my mother's story began to show. The Willow Creek Gazette ran a follow-up. Not an apology, they never print those, but a quiet correction: funds secured in trust for Margaret Hayes' care. No evidence of missing money. The fundraiser page disappeared overnight. Donations refunded. And the whispers in town shifted. What had been sympathy for Margaret became something else. Doubt. Curiosity. Questions she couldn't control. But the biggest change came from Emily. James forwarded me an email she had written after reading through the trust records, and the file of texts and messages I'd given him. For the first time in my life, my sister saw the full picture. "Rachel," she wrote, "I had no idea. I knew Mom could be critical, but I never understood the weight you carried. The things she said to you, the way she dismissed you. I should have seen it. I should have done more. I'm so sorry I left you alone with her all those years." Her words blurred in front of me as I read them. For decades, I had stood in Emily's shadow, compared and diminished, treated as the daughter who would never measure up. Now finally, she admitted the truth. Emily even confessed something I never thought I'd hear. Part of me stayed away because I was afraid. If I wasn't the good one, I'd become the target instead. You took it all. And I let you. Tears filled my eyes, not just from pain, but from something I hadn't felt in years. Validation. For once, I wasn't the villain. For once, someone saw me. Emily ended her email with a plea. "I don't expect forgiveness, but when you're ready, I'd like to rebuild our relationship. Just you and me, separate from Mom." I closed my laptop and sat still, my chest aching. My mother had told me her birthday wish was for me to leave her life. And because I finally had, the truth was surfacing. The golden child was seeing through the gold. For the first time in 32 years, I wasn't completely alone. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. Disappearing hadn't made me vanish. It had made me visible. When the fundraiser collapsed and the town stopped clapping for her, my mother tried a different tactic. The first letter arrived at James's office. Her familiar cursive covered the page. "Rachel, I'm sorry you felt hurt by my words. I never intended for you to take such drastic action. If I was sometimes hard on you, it was only because I wanted the best. I've even agreed to see a therapist, though at my age it's ridiculous to explain myself to strangers. I hope this proves how much I want to fix this misunderstanding." I read it once, then twice, and each time the same truth sank in. This wasn't an apology. It was a performance. The words "sorry you felt hurt" made the blame mine. Therapy wasn't framed as growth, but as a burden she carried for me. I showed the letter to my therapist in Harbor Cove, Dr. Morgan. She shook her head. "This isn't accountability, Rachel. It's image control. She's still positioning herself as reasonable, and you as the one who overreacted." For the first time, I didn't fall for it. I didn't shrink or cry or beg for better. I simply told James to send back a short reply. "I acknowledge your letter. I'm glad you're seeing a therapist. I'm not ready for contact." The trust remains as arranged. Short, factual, free of the hooks that had trapped me all my life. 3 months later, another letter came. This one was different. "Rachel, I've continued therapy. I've learned things I never faced before. Truth is, I treated you cruelly. Not sometimes. Not accidentally. Consistently. And without justification. Can't undo those years. But I want you to know I see it now. And I am truly sorry. Whether you forgive me or not, I hope you find peace. You deserve it." I read it 3 times, bracing for the sting, the hidden barb, the manipulation. But this time there was nothing. For once, her words weren't wrapped in conditions. For once, she wasn't just saving face. I folded the letter and placed it carefully in my desk drawer. 'Cause maybe, just maybe, my mother was finally starting to change. And all it took was me doing what she'd asked for her birthday, leaving her life. By the time a year had passed, Harbor Cove didn't feel like hiding anymore. Felt like home. The little weathered cottage by the bay was now mine, legally mine. The same house where I had first unpacked trembling, unsure if I'd made a mistake, had become a sanctuary. A place where the walls didn't echo with criticism, but with laughter and peace. My freelance design business grew steadily. Small projects became regular clients. I even hired a virtual assistant, something I'd once thought impossible for a girl who could barely breathe under her mother's thumb. But the real change wasn't work. It was the people. Diane became my anchor, the woman who handed me coffee with a knowing smile and never asked for more than I was willing to give. Through her, I met others. Margaret, a former lawyer who traded courtrooms for a bookstore. Sophia, a retired teacher who now taught painting classes by the sea. Lily, a widow who led a hiking group that showed me parts of the coast I would have never found alone. Each of them carried stories of survival and reinvention. And with them, I wasn't the disappointing daughter. I was just Rachel, or rather Elaine, someone who belonged because of who she was, not what she could prove. Meanwhile, Emily and I were building something new too. What began as stiff, cautious emails had turned into regular video calls filled with laughter I hadn't heard from her in years. "I can't believe we both loved the same mystery novels growing up and never knew it," she said once, shaking her head. "We missed so much about each other." I nodded. "We were too busy playing the roles Mom wrote for us, the golden child and the failure." Emily's eyes softened. "I was terrified that if I stopped being the good one, she'd turn on me too. And she did, but only after you were gone." For the first time, I didn't feel bitter at her words. I felt free. 'Cause the pattern was breaking. As for my mother, we kept our distance. We exchanged only letters, hers handwritten, mine short and careful. No phone calls, no visits. Dr. Morgan reminded me often. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, and it isn't about stepping back into the fire. It's about freeing yourself. So I read her words, acknowledged her effort, but kept my boundary firm. I remembered her birthday toast, her wish that I leave her life. And for once, I wasn't fighting that wish. I was living it. And the truth? My mother had lost her grip on me. But I hadn't lost myself. One year after the birthday dinner that ended everything, I hiked to a hidden cove along the shoreline, a place you can only reach at low tide. The rocks were slick with sea spray, the waves thundered against the cliffs, and the wind tangled my hair as if the ocean itself was testing me. I sat on a driftwood log, knees pulled to my chest, and let the truth finally wash over me. For decades, I believed love meant sacrifice. That being a good daughter meant silencing myself, shrinking smaller and smaller until maybe, just maybe, she would notice me. But the only gift she had ever asked for was my absence. And that night at Bellini's, she made it clear. Rachel, I wish you would leave my life. So I did. And now, sitting at the edge of the Pacific, I realized something life-changing. Leaving wasn't selfish. It was survival. I hadn't disappeared to punish her. I had disappeared to finally appear as myself. The woman who walked out of that restaurant humiliated, clutching a gift she would never give, was not the same woman who now looked out at the endless horizon. That woman was broken. This one was whole. And in the strangest way, my mother's cruel wish had given us both something we never had before: truth. Emily saw it. Town saw it. And maybe, just maybe, my mother was starting to see it too. When I returned to the cottage that night, I lit a small candle on my desk and wrote one final letter. Not to my mother. Not to Emily. But to myself. Rachel, I began. You did the impossible. You chose yourself when every voice told you not to. You broke the cycle. You survived humiliation, guilt, and years of silence. And in walking away, you discovered something stronger than their approval, your own. I folded the letter, tucked it into my journal, and blew out the candle. Because disappearing hadn't been the end of my story. It had been the beginning. And now I'll leave you with this. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved because staying meant losing yourself? Or maybe you've been on the other side, realizing too late the value of someone you pushed away. Share your story in the comments. You never know who needs to hear it. And if my journey resonated with you, if you've ever felt the weight of being told to leave someone's life, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs the reminder. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is walk away. Because in disappearing from their world, you might finally begin to appear in your own.